He's got his Duke hat on this morning.
You know what? Probably just to support our good friend Mark Sebastian, I'll go with the Villanova hat. How about that?
And isn't that a George? What is that paw print on you?
Clemson.
I know you got kids. You got kids everywhere. Kids at many schools. Your schools.
It's just an outflow of money. I don't know.
Oh, and for people, ticker highlight shows on Mondays. I'm buying more of those Peloton calls. Anyway, but today we got something a little bit more exciting to talk about. You know, I hear this president guy. Is he? I feel like he's following through on his agenda. So what does that mean for us people? For all those that don't know, Frank is he is a venture capital angel investor, big in drones, and he's our Washington Insight guy, helping us how Washington works. He's also our legal counsel at Option Pit, as his very part-time job. We couldn't afford him if other than that. But most of his time is spent raising money for companies and figuring out what's going on in Washington at this point. So we're very lucky to have him. And
it's amazing to me that how upset people get when someone does exactly what they told them they would do. We just spent, and again, not to get political, but we kind of spent 4 years with administration that did things that it said was the opposite it was going to do. And, and didn't really, it was not transparent about anything. Trump literally, and again, this is not an endorsement of his policies. This is not, I'm not saying you should like them, the policies or not. That's up to you. We just look at, you and I just look at them, how does it help with trading? Right. But he has done exactly what he has said he is going to do. And yes, people are out of their minds. I mean, absolutely out of your minds. I look at it as kind of like, look, you get married and you and your wife say, hey, we want to do X, Y, or Z. And, the day after the wedding, your spouse comes and says, yeah, I changed my mind. I don't like that anymore. And well, wait a minute. That's not what the contract was that we entered into. So, he's doing everything he said, and, it's disruptive. We knew that. I mean, he said it back, he said it last year. He goes, there's going to be a lot of disruption. I want to fundamentally bring the country, including the economy, back to a different place. And we can certainly debate whether or not he's doing it the right way, but he is attempting to do that, and it's causing some upheaval. I mean, California looks like a blast right now. I mean, gracious, that just looks like a great time.
Well, and another question too is, ICE is not just operating in California, if I'm not mistaken. Aren't they? Don't they operate in multiple states across,
yes,
multiple areas? But
yeah, no, I'm pretty much all 50. I'm pretty sure it's all 50 states that they operate in. So
that's kind of what I was thinking. But
yeah. Anyway. So anyway, it's ruffling some feathers, but at the same time, there, he's putting out, he's doing some neat stuff that we are keeping an eye on. There's a big, back on like it was years ago. On June 6th, just a few days ago, there was an executive order that came out that is impacting the drone market, which is near and dear to our hearts. He's doing, there's a lot going on with energy policy, whether it's, nuclear or fossil fuels. And there's a lot going on with, mining, which, all these things tie in together. So, we've got a lot of things, in play, and, it's some fun stuff. And, let's, you tell me, where do you want to start?
I think we kind of want to lay out the three, and I'm going to do a little, make a little sheet here for people in a second. Give me 1 second. I think the important thing here is that this administration, like you said, whether you like it or not, they are doing, They are pushing the projects and agendas that they feel are important, and they telegraph it, right?
Yes.
Like you said. So when they sign an executive order, like let's say for like one of our examples is nuclear power, right? So like what's the next, how do those things, maybe just describe a little bit how those things percolate down the road and how creates opportunities for us looking for investments, 3 to 6 months out, like that, which is kind of capital gains, and mostly we do things like that in there.
Yeah, let's take a quick step back if we could. And
Okay. Yep.
the three things we laid out, I'm gonna quiz you, Andrew.
Okay.
If you look at it from a policy perspective, what do all three of these sectors that we just identified have in common from an underlying policy perspective?
Well, I think they're, I guess, future oriented, meaning, and also
I'm sorry, let me rephrase. Think geopolitics.
Right. Oh, okay. From a geopolitics point of view, it's about bringing control back to the U.S., I think.
Bingo. And with the main villain being
China.
Right.
So they want to make sure we have control of key areas, right? So I have 2 years banging the drum for energy, or 3 years long. It's probably one of the best set of trades we've had at cap gains. So energy is one.
Yep.
Okay. The second is taking control of our military technology, making sure we control that. That's the second one.
Yep.
And then the third one would be control of minerals for technology, AI, cars, everything like that.
And which ties directly back into the first two, by the way.
Right. So those are, so basically you could say then the Trump policy, right, is like, trying to assert U.S. sovereignty over key economic areas. Okay. Is that the right thinking about it like that?
Yes. And in the process, create more, and it ties into his nationalistic, approach that we're going to create domestic supply chains for things that are currently very China dependent. And by the way, it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick. And certainly some of the realities on the ground, if you will, throw wrenches into these plans. But some are easier. I think, ironically, you look at, the complexity of technology, nuclear, I think people would argue, is probably the most complex, but probably one of the easier ones to solve. Drones seem very easy, but are more difficult than nuclear even to solve, from creating the supply chains necessary to be a domestic powerhouse.
Okay.
And the same thing with the rare earth minerals. There's actually forces, honestly, the U.S. car companies, the big three, Ford, GM, and Stellantis, whatever they're calling themselves now, they are actually working behind the scenes to undermine rare earth policy.
Really?
Oh, yes, because in order to be competitive for electric cars, your average electric car has a couple 100 pounds of rare earth materials in it, mainly in the form of magnets.
Okay.
And, despite some of these some of the rare earth players in the U.S. starting to catch on a little bit, they're still not producing a fraction of what is necessary for U.S. consumption. So when the U.S. goes toe-to-toe with China and engages in trade wars, and China says, all right, great, we're cutting off your rare earth policies. Or the U.S. says, well, we're going to slap, 100% tariffs on these materials coming in. Some of these American companies go, oh darn, we got some problems on our hands. And either we're going to, have to cease lines of business, go out of business, or we got to find other avenues. So, behind the scenes, to get around some of these policies, we were looking at yesterday, there was an announcement that China is working with the EU to create a, quote, green commodity flow, arguing that these rare earth materials that absolutely destroy the Chinese environment, by the way, for
Right.
the way they produce them. They're going to flow to the EU. The EU is then going to flow these to American companies. That has been lobbying that the car companies in particular have done, and it in essence is to some degree undermining the administration's efforts to force domestic supply production.
Right. So there are a couple of competing factors along those lines everywhere. So you've
Correct.
got and then and the Chinese are going to do what is best for China. I think that's pretty easy to figure out.
Yep.
The U.S. is trying to do what's best for the U.S. But the reality is the two economies now are fairly intertwined. While we want to claw back some of this. We want to claw back some of this production here because I think at this point it's a national imperative. The Chinese still need to sell their minerals somewhere, right? Because they're pulling them out of the ground, and they still got to sell them somewhere.
And we are their largest consumer,
right? So
yeah.
But we have to start. We need a domestic production, and also. And it hasn't, because you've been involved in these in a rare earth project. Isn't it very difficult to get these things off the ground? Can you talk a little bit, maybe, Frank, about the fact that some of these companies have gone public and kind of getting rolling? You are, I would say, firsthand knowledge how difficult it is to go through everything to actually get a rare earth company kind of going, floating, getting it moving. The regulatory hurdles that we have that maybe Trump might be making things a little easier.
Yeah, trying to, and also putting some federal money behind it, which hasn't really happened in the past. But the first point is to make permitting easier. If ever you're taking something out of the ground, particularly if it's on BLM land, the permitting process has been egregious. It can take 10 years to get mining permits in the United States, and so it's that needs to be fast tracked, and then the administration is working to make that easier. Even getting plants opened up. Keep in mind rare earth. What does that mean? People, oh, rare earth, great. Well, it's not the rare earth. It's the end product that the rare earth produces, and it's mainly the big item is neodymium magnets, which are super high power magnets, and you can get incredible magnetivity from very small magnets. Like for instance, your iPhone. The reason you can get you turn on your speakerphone and you actually get pretty good music coming out of your little iPhone is because there's 3 high-powered magnets that create the sound. And
wow, so I had no clue there were magnets in my phone.
Oh yes, and the same thing with obviously when you're producing high-powered electric engines, you need the magnets to turn to help power the electric motor. So very important, but that's really one of the key end products. And yes, there's military uses. There's a rare earth called europium, which makes the color blue for heads-up displays and other things. Makes it possible. So there's a lot of different uses for these, but neodymium magnets are the big one. And we're trying. There's a couple of companies that are trying. They do parts of it, right? So there's some that do the actual mining, taking the materials out of the ground. There's others that do the processing where they refine the minerals and put them into a state that they can then be used for a finished product. And then there's others that are trying to create the actual magnets themselves. There's a couple that are trying to do the entire supply chain, but again, it's going to take a long time for them to get off the ground. I'm involved in a project where the permitting to actually take stuff out of the ground is yet to happen. So the company is operating and starting to make money with the finished product. So they're actually getting materials from other places to make magnets, but the complete supply chain is still not up and running.
And it's still a hurdle, like even now. So I have like the craziest example of this, just like in our own, like, so our HVAC guy wants us to buy an air conditioner right now because the EPA is going to make old air conditioners basically illegal for however they can supposedly do that, and switch to some other very caustic brand. I'm surprising because they don't want to install them. So at least in Maine, I don't know if anybody else is dealing with air conditioning, but the government, when they decide to make it difficult, right, like you're dealing with here, can make it very, very difficult. And of course, this helps, create some squeeze on the stocks, squeeze on the minerals, and everything else over a period of time. So hopefully they're trying to loosen this up. Of course, we'll know when they're loosening up when you can actually start to drill stuff for yourself. So that's why I think this is and there's also a question here about, says, Frank, what is the extent of rare earth deposits in the U.S.? If you have any color on that question.
Absolutely huge. Rare earths are not rare. They're very common. The issue becomes, are they concentrated enough to make extraction economically feasible? So, that's the big issue. And then it's also, there's 17 rare earths. So it also then becomes which mixture of rare earths in what quantities are in your particular mine.
Gotcha.
And they're split up between light rare earths and heavy rare earths. And, for depending on, the use case that you're extracting for, you want heavies. Some people want light, but heavies are the more popular, and they're the harder to find in concentrated form. On top of that, it's then, what do you have to do to extract the rare earth from the underlying rock around it?
Okay.
And, there's different methods for that, but depending on the rock, some of those methods can, end up being very dirty, because you're not just talking, pulverizing, you're talking acid based and other things that get, environmentally unfriendly.
Okay. So we have a solid case here for, well, I think the important thing too is demand is pretty, I think that the end run on demand is quite high, which obviously is why you guys are trying to get things going as fast as you can. It's not a question of who can we sell it to, it's how do we get it out of the ground fast enough and process it.
Yes.
So that's a big, again, that's a topic we look at in cap gains on a regular basis when the opportunity pops up. Now, what's the, we have two more topics here. We only have like 11 minutes left. So I want to make sure we hit the other two, but that was pretty good. I learned more about rare earths now. I also learned a word, neodymium.
Neodymium.
Neodymium. Okay.
Neodymium. Yes.
Now I think the next big one is energy. Meta was the next megatech company to, and we had I think we had CEG, Constellation Energy trading this, that worked out okay. But nuclear energy policy in general, right? Self-sufficiency, and then nuclear energy in specific with what the Trump administration is trying to do there. Do you have any color on that one?
Yeah, I don't know. Is this, I don't really look at this one as much of a Trump administration issue as a private sector one. Obviously, working with government to help fast track. So when you start getting, big industry like Meta, Amazon, that are making these massive data warehouses, big AI is an energy suck in a massive way. I mean, the data centers that need to be created to house all of the data being created by AI will, dwarf what's been done in all of history within a couple months. And it's just going to keep escalating and escalating and escalating. Moore's law, always said, technology doubled every 2 years. Mm-hmm. It's down generally considered, the the folks, the powers that be considered Moore's law to now be at 6 months.
Wow.
When you start looking at just purely in the AI sector, it could be down to weeks, at this point. So,
wow.
So all of that data being created just is a massive suck of energy. And what some of these companies are realizing is the grid can't handle it. Grid won't do it. Fossil, obviously not good for the climate if you're just tripling up on your fossil fuels or whatever it takes. Nuclear is the way to go. But again, big nuclear, not necessarily the way to go because they're not where you need them to be, the reactors. So then you start getting the conversation of small modular reactors, the SMRs, that can be put virtually anywhere. And you've got now the Metas and the Amazons and some of these big Silicon Valley tech firms actively lobbying the US to fast track the approval processes for these SMRs. So you're getting this whole other industry, SMRs, which have been around now for a few years, but have been kind of languishing. They're not, they were having trouble at first getting permits. Then they were having, people were having trouble getting their arms around the use cases. Well, now you've got very defined use cases, and you've got the powers that be behind that, which are massive, pushing for the regulatory approvals.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Amazon, Microsoft, and now Meta.
Yep.
All pushing for small nuclear reactors to power, which could be like almost unlimited energy needs.
100%.
Or like as AI just keeps, growing. So like there hasn't been many times where you could look in history and say, oh, wow, there's almost unlimited run rate for demand for energy, and the grid is not able to handle it currently. And I think the fact that they're going out and now you could tell they're lobbying the administration, like, we need to get this stuff online now. And again, I like this as part of your thesis on the Trump policy of asserting, economic sovereignty over these key issues for us for the country to go forward. These are things that we have to be able to do in order to kind of keep our position, so to speak, in the world. And his policy is to try to push those forward. And like you said, he's getting pushback on like various, environmentalists and all kinds of stuff are still making things difficult.
Which again, I don't have it. I mean, I don't want to see the environment dirtied,
right?
But there are clean ways to do this, and and there's better ways than the Biden administration was pushing. They weren't big on nuclear power. They were pushing windmills, incredibly bad for the environment, and seabirds and eagles and other things.
The whales in the Gulf of Maine.
Yeah, I mean, just generally not good. Solar power a little better. I got no problem with solar power, just as long as you put it in the right place, right? And but nuclear, which was keep in mind, the great irony is that the Green New Deal that came out on green energy did not even address nuclear power. In fact, it said nuclear power is not a green energy.
Right.
So we have a very different approach from this administration, and it even when the Green New Deal came out, the experts said unless you're 50% plus nuclear power in the U.S., you can never achieve carbon neutrality. And so you need to, if you truly want a carbon-free and power grid, you have to have massive nuclear infusion into that.
Right. So that is a third key growth area that we're looking for in the next 6 months. So we have basically nuclear energy, although we've always been on the oil side because one of your great ideas was, in order to build all this stuff, in order to build nuclear energy, in order to pull the lithium out of the ground, what are you going to do? What are you going to use to do that stuff, right? Good old-fashioned oil. So yes. Every time oils have been a dip, we've been a buyer on oil. We just closed an oil trade in capital gains now for a 50% win, because every time oil prices go down, it's inevitable they're going to come back up because like you've already said, we need all of that to build all of this stuff. It's that
Yes.
stuff that's inevitable. In our last, we got 4 minutes. 4 minutes for everybody. Military tech. Now, this is another surprising. Frank's got his fingers in a couple of pies. So this is another company, early stage company. Actually, you're building stuff. Tell us about military tech in the last 4 minutes.
Yeah, obviously important. Budgets are huge. One of the reasons we are focusing heavily on the military space is, the only area of the most recent budgets to get a big boost was defense. So the U.S. is putting money in, and also if you go across the EU, Vietnam, Australia, all of these countries have seen huge bumps in their military budgets. Probably doesn't bode well for the peace of the world down the road, but we're seeing huge bumps in demand for military tech, but cutting edge military tech, new drones. There's an asymmetry of warfare going on right now where a $2,500 drone literally built on a battlefield can take down a tens of millions of dollar helicopter, or be snuck in under the radar and take out an entire airfield of bombers to the tune of billions and billions of dollars of damage, crippling that force. So there is this asymmetry of warfare, and so the U.S. is addressing that, but it's always been, again, certain regulations have made it very difficult for American companies. I'm involved in a private entity drone company. We're trying to get off the ground. I can't find places in the United States to test fly my drone. It is insanely difficult. And
really? I had no idea. Because you get the drones over New Jersey, right? How come they get, but you can't?
Very difficult. Very difficult. So part of the executive order that came out on the 6th was to make it easier for companies like mine to test and fly and bring technology to the forefront. And not just drones, it's also eVTOL aircraft. So, the future of, flying taxis and, how we test those. So it tied in both. Again, it's a national security issue on the drone side. The largest drone in the United States, that not largest in size, but by use, is DJI Maverick drones, Chinese drone companies. We shouldn't be using those. I mean, they're literally flying around all over the United States with cameras. People think they're using them for fun, and all we're doing is collecting data for the Chinese. It's just incredible built-in espionage, because all this stuff gets uploaded to clouds. You don't know where it's going. Right. I'm not saying that China is stealing all this data. I'm not saying they're not. So they are. So there's been a big move, and that will, we've got our eye on some publicly traded drone companies that will definitely benefit from this. That it will make it easier for them to bring their tech to the marketplace. And I believe we're going to talk about some of that in Cap Gains later. Andrew.
We are. So Trump. So he's trying to make it easier for domestic drone producers. So I got this little PDF thing for people. Just a couple of key things. Basically, I'm calling it the Frank Gregory Trump policy about he wants to assert economic sovereignty over key areas. Military technology drones make it easier for startup drone companies like yourself. Needed for a domestic drone makers to get going, right? To test. That's one. Nuclear energy for AI through small nuclear reactors. 2, and all those companies that support that. And then 3, domestic rare earth. I guess it's not rare, but it's just the Chinese just do it, right? And we have not done it. Trying to make that happen here. So all of these topics, these are key areas for us, right? I would say the most important topics for us the next 6 months in Cap Gains. So what we're doing, we have a special offer for anybody that's interested. For $4, click the link on top. Frank and I are looking for 3 to 5 key names over the next 6 months in Cap Gains. We're looking for 100% gains in the stock as these areas belong. We've already had 100% gains in several of the stocks we've looked at, or more in the meantime. and we're looking for 1,000% gains on the calls. Hopefully, we just want one to bust big on some of the picks. So you click to join. It's $4 if you want to try out capital gains for a little while. We're giving you a easy chance. Frank and I meet once a week, Tuesdays at 2:00. Try it out. $4. It's the cost of a coffee. And you get it from the horse's mouth with Frank, which is great. And I put the trades together, and on we go. And it's been a great run. It's probably my best product this year, because being able to stick to these things and come back is a great thing. So click the link up top. All the information is right there. And Frank, I'll see you at 2:00 at Capital Gains.
Looking forward to it, my friend.
All right. And there we go. For everybody in Cap Gains, this is all goodies you get already. All right, everybody. Have a good day. Thank you very much for coming. This PDF will come out with just, the big topics here from Frank with this video resent. All right, everybody. Have an excellent day.
Take care.